Financial crisis is upon us. Now, those watching this video, chances are you know this already, but there are those in the mainstream media who refuse to look at the information. Well, here are 6 factors for a global financial reset. Let's get into them right away. They're in no particular order. Britain to include China's RMB as foreign currency reserve. This is huge news. So let's get into what the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, said. I can now announce that the UK government intend to be the first national government outside of China to issue a bond in China's currency. We issued bonds in the US dollar before, and now we will be issuing a bond in RMB. This is big news going on. This is more of this currency war that has been taking place. The currency war, I believe, is something that can take down a nation faster than any weapon, traditional weapon that has been used. This is something that has been going on steadily over the past few years. We've seen the dollar weakening, and of course it fluctuates on a day-to-day basis. However, we can see that countries are choosing to use their own currencies for bilateral trade, and here is another step forward in that direction. Let's move on quickly. The IMF here in talks with African nations to expand the bailouts on the Ebola crisis. So, of course, all of this Ebola news is bringing a headache to the country, and they need funds. So, of course, the IMF is there to step in. Now, it would be nice, it would be very beneficial for these countries. However, if we look historically at what happens with an IMF bailout, you'll see that consistently, countless times, the nation is more poor later on than they were prior to getting the bailout. It is pretty dramatic when you see these statistics. So I wrote about that in my book, quoting here William Engel and the book Seeds of Destruction. It's a pretty great book. The debt terms of the IMF were used to force the countries to virtually give away their most precious economic assets to foreign interests in order to repay a debt that grew ever larger. You saw that with Greece, and you've seen this in other countries around the world, particularly in Europe. You can see that. However, the fact remains is that this is going on all around the world, where the IMF comes in and they put a stranglehold around that country, and it is simply to do this on purpose. That is exactly why. This is a letter. You may not be able to read the font. It's quite small. Essentially talking about negative interest rates. So the Bank of America is sending out this letter to their clients saying that we may charge you after October 15, 2014. You can read the letter for yourself. But essentially, this is negative interest rates. A big concern for those individuals with bank accounts that they are paying 0% interest on, getting 0% interest and paying 0% in fees. And basically they are going to be losing money consistently over a period of time, not just to inflation, but to an actual form of taxation here on the bank account itself. So this is something that individuals need to really look at and say, what is my money really worth when you're keeping it at the bank? They're using it for all their kind of schemes, fractional reserve banking and all this sort of thing, and they're going to take money off the top as well. It's pretty crazy to think about. And don't forget the bail-ins. The bail-ins are what I like to preach on consistently, and other individuals simply don't get into it too much. The bail-ins are a very, very dramatic thing when you think about it, that they can just close up on a bank holiday, and the next thing you know, a large percentage of your money has been taken away. JP Morgan previews rising interest rates. Quote, in the short term, investors sell what they can. This is huge news right here, talking about, exactly what's going to happen when you these rising interest rates. And now, of course, the Fed may not raise the interest rates, and of course I believe personally that if they do raise the interest rates, the increments are going to be so small, as they always do, and it will continue to allow the bubble to expand. Now let's get into the quote. They said asset price inflation produced by 7 years of zero interest rates has to morph into asset price deflation when the Fed starts hiking rates. And that's pretty obvious. All of this has been fueled by their tools, like they like to call them, of low interest rates and QE. So as soon as they step back on both of those, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. Next, we have EU members purchased oil from ISIL. Now, the rhetoric of the EU nations has been to attack the ISIL or ISIS or the Islamic State but you can see here that they're actually partners with them. And of course, behind the scenes, let's be honest about this, they have been funding them the whole time, and I've covered that before. And here they are now publicly buying oil from the enemy. And what I'd like to say about oil is that this is one of those assets that really fluctuate based on the economic and political situations that are occurring around the world. It is one thing that can be extremely volatile. We saw that going on various times throughout history in the recent past. OECD cuts economic growth forecasts, and this is not just the OECD, the IMF has done so as well. You saw the different rating agencies cutting the debt of many countries that has been taking place since the financial crisis and even up into the recent few past here. So look at the continued weakness of the recovery demonstrated the need for significant changes in the economic policy, and it needs a complete overhaul. When they say changes in the economic policy, they, for example, within Europe, institute this thing called the ESM, the European Stability Mechanism, and of course it does nothing for the stability of the whole economy. It does nothing because the entire system itself is fraudulent. That's the way it works. But of course, nothing will be done to ever fix these problems. There has to be some sort of reset, a crash, a collapse, a crisis. Call it what you want. The fact remains is that the policies in place right now are not working, and in fact are doing the exact opposite. If you found this informative, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out a lot. And of course, don't forget to become an insider. The insider is where all my best stuff is for free, and that is at themoneygps.com. You scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with short, concise info.